All right, cool. All right, so let's make Mr. Brown welcome. Jamon Brown. All right, so Mr. Brown, I got a few questions for you, and then I'm gonna open it up, let you just share from your heart. But as far as personal branding, what does a personal brand mean to you?
Personal brand, for me, it's really how you're perceived by others. And I think for me, when you think about an athlete and athlete branding, there is layers to it. You know what I mean? You have the on the court, on the field, in the locker room, in the program type of brand, but then you got your brand when you step off the court, off the field, who you are. And what I've learned is a lot of times they're parallel, right? So find me a good player or athlete, they probably have a good brand, right? And vice versa. Because how you do anything is how you do everything. Yeah. So I think the brand just goes with, of course, your name, of course, what you stand for and what people think you stand for. But it can also open doors to other things, right? Like he alluded to, I own horses, I have a couple of businesses, but that's because of my football brand, right? Football brand was able to open doors for me that was outside of football. And so when I think of branding, I think it's something that you're doing all the time, right? When you put your feet on the floor, you brand it, right? How people see you, what you do, it all goes into that. You know what I mean? So branding is everything, especially nowadays with social media, with just how you market things. You know, it's all about the brand. It's all about your brand, and everybody has a brand. You don't have to be an athlete. Some of y'all may be business owners, right? Branding starts now, right? Because a lot of people are gonna say, hey, how is that person gonna be my boss when they on social media wilding out, right? Vice versa. If you're trying to build your brand and you're on social media, you know, taking the crazy videos, you got to doing all your different, you know, gestures, would somebody wanna hire you, right? Would somebody wanna give you that opportunity? So I think branding is one of the most important just nowadays. Yeah. You know, it's bigger than education. It's bigger than the degree you might have, just because the way of the world. You know what I mean? So you always need to be top mind aware of what my brand is, right? Right now, when you walk in this building, your brand is being shaped and formed by your teachers, by your coaches, by your peers. You know what I mean? And so everything you do can positively or negatively affect what that brand looks like. And that's something I had to learn. I'm from the West End, right? The way we grew up down there, we can't take everywhere. You just can't. You can't. And so there was things that I had to learn within my brand that was like, hey, if I'm gonna be an athlete, well, I can't be with the dope boys. And a lot of them was my homies, but there was times where, hey, I can't do the pictures. You know what I mean? I can't do the late nights, right? Because I got a brand that I'm trying to protect. You know what I mean? And so through life, you got to figure out, hey, what do I want my brand to be? Where do I see my brand in 10 years? Right? Because a lot of us ain't thinking about that. We in the moment, we having fun, which is cool. But you got to think about if you're trying to get hired at Google. Well, people like Google are going to Google you. You know what I mean? And some of the shit that we don't think is following us follows us. You know what I mean? So we got to just be aware of that. Just constantly work at it, and then think about, you know, where I want my brand to be, where I see my brand.
Right. So another word for brand. Another word for brand would be what your name is or your image or your likeness. So yes. I got a question for you. How would you approach college or even as a high school a high school athlete, how would you approach that with NIL opportunities that as they exist right now? How would you approach like your high school going into your college?
I mean, man, listen, if NIL was a thing when we was in high school and college, things would be a lot different. But what I would tell people, when you think about the NIL space, think about really those brands that you want to hook yourself to. You know what I mean? And I know for me, I could say it was Nike, but once I got to a certain point, Nike really wasn't it. It was more so essential water, different things that, you know, could kind of offset living. You know what I mean? Getting shoes, getting clothes, that stuff you gotta do, it's a necessity. You know what I mean? So I wasn't really trying to chase after those brands. So, you know, when you're approaching NIL, first thing I would say is identify the brands you wanna work with. And from that point, figure out what they wanna see in ambassadors or clients that they work with. You know what I mean? And then find the synergy there. NIL is a crazy space right now because a lot of people is getting paid. And that's good and bad, right? Because the biggest thing for me is like how you manage that. Once you start getting paid, it can go everywhere. It can go everywhere. And so I want to tell y'all, you know what I mean? As y'all start making money, think about what y'all doing with y'all money. Think about, you know, starting to create those habits that help you later on in life. One thing I wish I did in college was save more. Because by the time I got to the league, saving would have been a lot easier. You know what I mean? And so, NIL approach, I really just think, one, gotta identify the brands. Two, you wanna be able to manage what you're getting and how you're getting it. And then three, is the brands that I'm hooking with people that align with me, right? For an example, when you talk about Kanye West and what he's doing with Adidas, do you want to stand with a brand that might not stand with you, you know, based on how you may feel about certain things? On top of, do you want to be held to a point where you can lose all of that because of something you may feel or a view you may take? You know what I mean? And so that's all things you got to think about. All things you got to think about. I would have loved the NIL space. If it was alive when back when I was in college and in high school. But again, like I said, you got to be careful because you open up your business at that point. Take that first NIL deal, you are now a business, an organization, right? And your future brands will then kind of evaluate you on what you've done in the past. You know what I mean? And so you got to think about all of it.
All right, that's good. What questions y'all have out here? I think I got one more. Bryce, go ahead.
Do you separate yourself from like your bad friends? Do they feel some type of way?
I'm gonna say no. I think because why I grew up during a time where there was different respect for, you know, what everybody did, right? What do I mean by that? A lot of times, the guys who was in the streets, they protected the athletes. You know, when I grew up, they made sure, you know, for people like myself, when they knew certain things was going on, they would get us out of that vicinity. So I think they understood what, you know, where the journeys was taking us. There's always misunderstandings, you know what I mean? There's always different points of view. But at the end of the day, when you care for somebody, as friends should, then you'll understand, hey, they gotta go that route and I gotta go my route. And so for me, that's what it was a lot of times. I've had a few beefs, but I think I'm at a point in my life where I know how to get through that stuff without it really turning into something else. So yeah, there was no real beef when you walked away from those types of friends. It was all love.
I know you said, you mentioned the clearinghouse, and so part of your name, image, and likeness is that of a student. Explain what clearinghouse meant to you as a student, and any advice you would like to share with them.
Clearinghouse,
If
of
they're
course,
athletes.
was, you know, for athletes, basically, the requirements for what you needed to go to the next level, right? And for me, I wasn't the best student. I felt like, you know, football was everything at the time, and I didn't really have to focus on nothing else besides football. But what I didn't understand was you're a student athlete, right? So students in front of athlete for a reason. And so when I started dealing with the clearinghouse, my GPA was low. My GPA, I was actually not even eligible for the scholarship to Louisville. And I found that out once I entered the clearinghouse. And so I had to, junior year and senior year, I had to redo freshman and sophomore classes. I think I redid freshman English, science. It was a bunch of classes that I should have did right the first time.
Yeah.
But thank God I was able to get it right by the end. I was able to get the score that I needed because the clearinghouse was a sliding scale for athletes, which was something I felt was a bonus. My low GPA didn't play me out of my scholarship. And so I was able to get the score I needed to meet my GPA, which I ended up graduating with a 2.3 core GPA, which is rather low. But it was what I needed. I ended up getting a 21 on ACT after taking the ACT 4 times, as well as taking the SAT. The clearinghouse was something I seen a lot of players fall to, you know what I mean? Because when you start talking about classes, requirements, things you've done, things you haven't done, if you're looking at senior year and you ain't done your foreign language and you ain't done some of the things, you don't even have the time to get it done, you know what I mean? And so, the biggest thing with that is jumping on that thing as early as you can, you know what I mean? If you're a sophomore, start looking at it now, start knowing what I need to do to make sure I'm eligible now. Which plays in with the whole conversation, right? We're talking branding. Don't wait. It starts now. You feel me? And it will dictate where you end up. Because we live in a world that it's not about what you know, it's who you know now, right? Well, think about who you know. Think about who's your friends. Think about who people think you know. It all plays a part. Good, bad, or indifferent. You feel me? And so my biggest thing is, hey, always branding. It's A-B. Always branding, right? Because you're gonna leave this place and your brand's gonna take you to your next spot. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I think there's a common quote that's used is like, your gift will get you in the room, or your character will keep you in the room. What lessons have you learned in that to where your gift, your talent, or whatever can get you into an area, but it's your character that keeps you? What lessons or advice would you share surrounding that?
oh man, so there was a point in my life where I thought I could be kind of two type of people. You know what I mean? On one end it was the athlete, right, that majority of the times did the right things, you know, for the most part followed the rules. But then there was the other side, was like, all right, when nobody's watching, right, maybe I can get away with some of these things. And so it got to a point where I'm in college, right? I'm going through kind of just some personal issues just because I wasn't playing as much as I wanted to. And so my coach said, find me a good football player, find you a good person, right? And they're parallel. And he was talking to me about, hey, some of the things that I was skipping out on or cutting corners on, which was class, which was homework. I did everything I needed to do on the field and in the weight room when it came to football, but I cut corners a lot of times outside of that, right? And that put me down on the depth chart, where I'm thinking, hey, I'm better than this guy, my practice is better than this guy, blah, 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 why ain't I playing? And it was really from just when you speak on character, right, being able to do the right things when nobody was watching. And so that's where I learned real quick that I can't just be on surface level right, I gotta be all the way around right. And I had to get to it. I got to it.
Yeah, cause you said something earlier, you said how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. I believe that, meaning, for an athlete, if you wanna be a pro, start making pro habits now. You know what I mean? It's not even about, like pro habits is how you approach class, right? How you show up to school. Are you showing up to school on time? Are you showing up to class ready? Are you where your feet are? You know what I mean? That's pro, and I learned that through the journey.
Yeah.
Right? Got better as I went, but I always had the fundamentals there, and so that's for anybody. Whether you want to be a pro athlete or you want to be a business owner, right? Those people they pay attention to detail people, you know what I mean? And so think about those things when you think about where I want to be or where I see myself in the future, and how do I get there?
What other questions? Any other questions?
What was the biggest transition from high school to the next level of college as a student athlete?
The physical part, there's always a physical transition. I don't think, that's nothing as an athlete you focus on, right? The biggest transition for me was the mental aspect of it, because there was a lot more mental demand than in high school, right? Film study increases, right? Training table, how you eat, that becomes more of a thing in college. You know what I mean? In high school, yeah, you got your coach saying, hey, you too big, they lose weight, bro. But they don't really have the resources to create a whole regimen for you. You know what I mean? Like, as when you get to college, that becomes your job. And so that was the biggest transition for me, was the mental aspect, the mental demand, having a 3-hour meeting, right? Being in there and watching film and maybe have watched the same clip 16 times, being able to do the redundant, the stuff that just makes you like, why are we doing this? That was the biggest transition for me, and that's on all levels. That wasn't just as an athlete, that was when we got in the classroom. You know what I mean? I didn't have the best habits in high school. And I found that out when I got in college, and your professor is not calling your name.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They don't care if you hear you, or
Yeah.
did you get it or did you not? You know what I mean? And so that's what I would say was the biggest, the mental aspect. You know what I mean? So if you're thinking about taking that step, anybody going to college, start to prepare your mind, because it's not like this. You ain't gonna have a teacher saying, hey, get in the class now, it's time to, you ain't got none of that. It's all self-accountability. You know what I mean? And so it tests you. You feel me? Are you that person that say, hey, I could do it later? Because it'll come out then, and that'll be your biggest demon. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I share often that, like, I was a Porter Scholar, and I was a Porter Scholar loser. I lost that thing, because you gotta keep a certain GPA. But all these, the mental aptitude you need for college is a lot different, because you have to, there's nobody to hold you accountable besides yourself for classes, and that's across the board, whether it's athletics or just college in general. But I think, as far as being successful in building your brand or your business, or as an employee even, those habits are extremely important, extremely important. What other questions? Well, let's give it up for Mr. Brown.